One of the other big moments here, as far as content and talks and discussions, was in and around cybersecurity, of course. And it was really nice to see that become front and center, because we think it's, we've talked about it, for a long time now on Control Trends. But that is an interesting fact. And the point is that building owners are now starting to take note about cybersecurity. And I think, the education that we all have been doing, Fred Gordy, us, all of us, and others, I think is starting to resonate with building owners and some of the system integrators out there as well.
Well, I sure do, and I think it's a good segue into our first guest coming onto the show, is that you have a very important first step to make, and one is to acknowledge that you can't, like you always said, security through obscurity is a doomed approach towards cybersecurity. So you need people that can explain this conversation well enough to make people move, commit to action. And I think our first guest coming up here that you'll introduce, they've got a real intelligent approach, and they've got a very simpler. I have one of the scorecards. Get your building cyber safe secure. Get your building's cyber safe score. So they give you the opportunity to do a good, bad, and ugly using a very simple but important methodical approach towards determining your vulnerability and then taking action. And they can provide the steps you need to secure your networks and your buildings.
Well, that's a good segue. First guest is going to be Tom Shircliff, principal, one of the co-founders of Intelligent Buildings. And what's interesting on the cyber side, and that'll be part of our discussion, is also the fact that they are consultants, and that the consultant side has starting to see cybersecurity as an issue and something that they are addressed. So join me in welcoming Tom Shircliff.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yes,
Tom comes on stage.
yes, musical chairs.
I'm humble, thank you.
So Tom, welcome. Appreciate you taking the time out in this gorgeous afternoon here in San Jose. And before we get into a couple things, from the consultative perspective, and again, you bring a whole new look at certain things that I do, or Kenny, or Eric, with our background and our businesses. What did you see, and what really stood out at this year's conference this year for you guys?
Well, a couple of things at a higher level, and one, it was as many people as I think we've seen in a long time. It was totally packed. And then also in some of our sessions, we asked the audience, who were first-time attendees, and in some cases, half or more raised their hands.
Wow.
So we have a core group that always comes back and is really pushing things for the industry. And I think we had a really big new wave of attendees here. And really, I think they were here to learn, but also there were a lot of people taking action. They were looking for solutions. They were going to pick somebody and do something. So I thought it was a very active conference this year.
Also, I guess, too, I asked this to Ken and to Eric, is there one thing that really stood out in your mind, just from a technology perspective, that really caught your eye, that you guys are going to keep your eyes on over the next 6 months, 12 months, and things like that?
Yeah, I think so. We've all seen the emergence of analytics and the maturity of it, and that continues to march on. There's a lot of runway there. But the thing that intrigued us was water analytics. And that is something that we're seeing. We've seen it, big water treatment, that kind of thing. But what was interesting is to see solutions, and we're putting consulting time into this at the chiller and cooling tower level for how it not only relates to water usage, but what is the energy relationship there. And what it turns out is up to 1 to 3% of your total energy spend can be wasted just on inefficient pipes in your infrastructure. Not only that, we've learned that there's life safety issues with Legionella, and there's asset life issues. So that is a really, really big area with very little attention that's been paid to it so far.
Well, I had heard or read something recently where they said water's the new energy. And in this whole new shift on water or concentration in water, how about conservation and conserving water? Is that part of what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a sustainability aspect to that for sure. Also, the cost of water continues to go up, so there's a business side of that. And as we just touched on, there's also, when you say water is the new energy, there also is energy it takes to push water.
Water, correct.
So in many ways, that is true. So I think that is a topic that's going to be really rising. You almost feel a certain maturity in energy. It's going to always get better and always get tighter, but that is almost an accepted topic that you have to tackle aggressively. And I think water is going to move up to be a peer of that.
Eric, have you, in dealing with the various folks that you do with at Stromquist, has water been brought up? And if so, what are your customers saying about water?
Well, I think for years we've sold BTU systems and water metering systems, and if you sort of think relatively about the cost of gas now, maybe into the cost of water, I mean, think about it. You go buy a gallon of gas, it's a certain amount of money. Go buy a gallon of water, you're paying more for the water than you are for the gas. And when that sort of dawns on you that you're doing that, and everything Tom's saying really holds credence, I think there's a great opportunity there to integrate the water saving solutions. Obviously, Kenny and I both sell variable frequency drives as you do, Mark. That's one way you can conserve water by having the chiller be more efficient. But so I think there's a dynamic of the sustainability, the energy factor, but also the quality of water is huge. So water filtration and stuff like that could be big too.
How about Kenny from your end?
Well, what, I want to grab the microphone before
Grab
I lost my thought, but then this light keeps bothering me. Mr. Mayor of San Jose, would you please put these lights out during the daytime? Light litter is abounding here.
We are seeing it firsthand. Kenny,
but
you are in heaven here in light litter.
I am, but it breaks my heart because this is supposed to be the cradle of innovation and the top of the tech line here, and we got lights on everywhere. But most seriously, it's good to have analogies, but water in our area is like it's like good Mexican food. It goes in, but it has to come out, and you pay more money for it to come out than you do when you to buy it, right? But no, we do recovery, so we have to pay for the affluent water leaving a facility now has become a major concern because you're getting charged. It's an automatic assumption that if you had 100 gallons of water go in and you can't prove that some of that was evaporated or consumed or whatever, you pay for that same amount going on. So we've had a recent influx of water meters. So I agree 100% that the whole concept of water is rising in importance. It was like a well camouflaged, taken for granted utility. Now it's becoming a front row.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I've got a question for you.
Your show, Eric. Come on.
I've got the mic now too.
You're in control. We're in the control business.
Oh, Therese took it away. Therese Sullivan took it away from me yesterday, so
okay.
I'm going to give it back to you in a second.
No,
but sort of here's the question, and Kenny, you sort of sparked this. We really are at a great place of innovation, Silicon Valley, right? So they think differently, they talk differently, they work out of different paradigms than we do, right? And Tom, I want to ask you a question because you're dealing with teams of people that make decisions about smart building and investing in buildings and so on and so forth. Everything from CFOs to CIOs. As a matter of fact, part of your business model and part of your premise is you've got to get all those people on the same page. So my question for you is, what paradigm are they operating out of that maybe keeps them from taking advantage of this technology? And what paradigm should they shift to in terms of their thinking about smart buildings, intelligent buildings?
Well, real estate's in a transition process. I mean, it's really one of the last industries to take on big data and analytics and even simple things like local area networks. So we estimate real estate's about a decade behind the other industries that have already adopted these technologies: healthcare, finance, manufacturing, et cetera. So they're really just catching up. And part of the challenge is they are historically a very fragmented industry. So you've got asset owners and building managers and contractors and property managers and facility managers. So the ecosystem is very fragmented, and it takes a while to get that going. So we are seeing awareness at the top of that value chain, and it's just beginning to push down, evidence what we talked about the activity this year. I will make another comment on that when we were talking about water, is that, related to this topic, one of the things in water is not just the technology, which has been a little bit lacking, but even that system of the water treatment contractor and the BAS contractor and the facility manager, that whole people process is not quite aligned. So just to take a micro topic and then also answer for your macro question.
Very well said. I'm going to give the mic back to you, Mark. Oh, one last question for Tom. Probably not the last question. But, one of the things that one of the biggest jobs, quite candid, we got in Atlanta. It was kind of interesting how it happened. We're in the thick of things in the job, and my integrator called up and said, the owner said, if you can get us on Control Talk now, or Control Teams, you come do a video after the job's done. He wanted to know if he knew me, and if we could get him, he said he'll give us the job if we do that. And so we did the job, and afterwards we did the interview. And afterwards we got to be buddies. I started talking to him. He said, well, he had one of the biggest environmental law firms in the country in one of the building we were in, and apparently they were giving him a hard time. They weren't doing enough about sustainability. So part of the package we provided was, a big board talking about how much energy they were saving. And it made me realize, at least in his case, how important being perceived as being sustainable and green was part of his brand and part of his marketing. My question for you, are you seeing more and more people that's becoming part of their brand?
I think that has certainly occurred, and it's even sometimes, large tenants have made it a requirement that buildings have certain sustainability certifications before they'll move in. I think what is interesting in that area is that it is going from a stereotype of a LEED where there's a one-time designation to more of how are you continually sustainable. And I think particularly for you guys here can appreciate that's really done with technology. And so even we had some sessions at the conference here where we talked about the role of technology in sustainability. So it's not just about caring and even behavior or even recycling and some of these things that we do behaviorally, but it's how does technology make sustainability an ongoing thing and a measurable thing as well.
Just one more thing on the sustainability issue. One thing I've noticed is that especially public-facing companies, companies that are out there on the stock exchange that are public companies, that they truly have invested a lot in sustainability, and they are actually reporting it to their shareholders. I'm seeing it in annual reports and things like that. So I think that's been part of the drive and the initiatives behind sustainability. But to your point, when you guys go in and begin talking with a potential opportunity, and you're talking about the strategy first and foremost, that's a foundation. How do you bring up this whole idea of sustainability, and do you also bring up water immediately?
Yeah, it's a good point because sustainability is better off when it is part of a way of running your business as opposed to the strategy or the plan.
Right.
And I think that's been the most effective way to do it because a lot of times we talked about technology in sustainability. Well, that can also help with your overall operating costs and other things that may not be sustainability related. So I think it is, ironically, a more sustainable approach to make sustainability part of the whole strategy and the whole plan. Now, having said that, we have had large Fortune 100 customers come to us where they've hit a sustainability wall. And they needed technology to punch through, and yes, it would save energy, but they were more focused on their carbon numbers than it was on operating cost or energy. So just an anecdote where they said, we've gotten rid of space, we've changed behavior, we've done all these things for sustainability, and now what? And they really wanted what we thought was energy technology, but for sustainability purposes.
Good. Well, I'm going to turn the subject, turn it a little bit, because Kenny mentioned about what you guys are doing in the cyber area and how you have made that part of your, and I can't remember the actual diagram. I've seen it in your office a couple times, where in your quadrant it's all part of your. So tell us a little bit about this. You've got a cyber audit, if you will. Tell us about that cyber report card type thing which you guys have instituted, and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so sometimes in the cyber topic, everybody gets all caught up in firewalls and penetration testing and all these IT things that can be important. But our surveys really cover that plus the other aspects that are critical. We talked about the people. So what is your internal policy? What are your internal networks? What are your contractor policies? You could have Fort Knox on a cyber protection, and if the guy or gal that has the keys to the door leave them on the table, then we've got a problem there. So this is really a more of a 360-degree view of what are the cyber risks, and we have had more and more companies ask us to do these surveys because again, back to this fragmented industry, they don't even know what's in their closets or what the policies are. So it's literally a visibility question about going there and seeing it and touching it and documenting it and asking it a few questions.
Exactly, and I've heard that a couple of times. This, what's in my closet, and you ask, you get 10 people in a room, and you ask, do you really know what's in your closet? And you might get one person out of that 10 that says, yeah, I really know what's in it, and the rest are the 9 no. So Kenny, with respect to cybersecurity, and again, we've talked about it time and time again, and it's going to be continuing to be a subject that we have to talk about. Because I think it's one of these issues that is one of the most pressing issues that we in our industry face. Did you see a couple things in some of these cyber breakout sessions that really stood out in your mind?
I sure did. I saw the, I think it was after the general session, the keynote session, I went to a session where, a rollout where they were talking about facts and figures and how much cybersecurity now costs. The cost of cybersecurity attacks globally is $45 billion. A lot of that's lost money because they're buying software programs, antivirus programs, because they really don't get it. We saw that there's new verbiage now in contracts that systems integrators have to be very, very careful about, because they're now putting you in of having the burden of risk and responsibility. You're supposed to, if you're touching a network, you're supposed to have an expertise equal to or above the existing network that you're working on. And then they actually have clauses in it that says you're responsible for any and all breaches. You're responsible for any repair required. You're responsible to notify the public, make apologies. In other words, you better get really good at some kind of you have to have a stance. So and this is a layered thing. So you have the, from the C-level down to the people that aren't. We were told that there's agencies that hire people going into office buildings. They have no access control. They can walk around anybody's desk, and if they see an open computer, and they give you 3 strikes. But if you're caught 3 times not complying to the cybersecurity rules of your particular organization, that's grounds for dismissal. So I mean, we're seeing a whole new opportunity for and to me, and I hate to say it, monetize it, but I think this is where we all play a role. I think like some of the top master systems integrators, like these guys that they're coming on next, they have solutions. I know that you all have some physical solutions with the Cyber Pro. I mean, everybody has got to make a move, and it's a teamwork. It's layered. So there's no single party, and the systems integrators can no longer walk away from it. They have to become, they have to incorporate that into their knowledge base, and they have to become maybe not experts, but they certainly need to know what they're doing, and then know who are the experts to get them involved.
So Tom, on the sorry, Eric,
one question for both you guys. So the cybersecurity, we've all been talking about that for a while. We've seen the doom and gloom. It's like the cyber criminals are way ahead of everybody else that we hear. But in the general session, I know it was Cade Metz or one of the guys was talking about the use of artificial intelligence and how that might be the answer to shutting these cybersecurity organizations down. I want to ask all 3 of you, does that give you hope what you heard there?
I think it does. I mean, technology and automation always is a big help. But I'll circle back around to where we started with that can be diluted by policy or non-compliance. So I think you're always going to have the will and the organizational approach to that, and even workflow around it, and then let that technology, even AI, do its part. So I think that's I think it's going to play a key part, but we can't wait for it.
Right.
I would echo what Tom said. It's cyber's happening now. We can't wait for all this great AI stuff to come around and things like that. So, we've got to address it now. And I'm gonna get to Kenny. Well, go ahead, Kenny. I want you to answer that.
Well, AI, I think I did get a good feeling to answer your question, Eric. I did, because I follow that gloom doom speech pretty well, and I like to have hope and believe that we can crowdsource solutions like that, because there's no one person, no one agency. So we need collaborative effort at the lowest and highest levels. But the fact that we can, now that they've got tremendous processing and computing power, that they can track things globally, because a lot of these problems are not local problems. And therefore we don't think about them locally, but we're all being subject to them. We're all paying the penalties for it and the price. So to see that we have some sort of a team, that our government says we can't do it. You assert, I go on there every day. I get all the notifications, and basically everybody is saying that there's too many the black hats and not enough white hats, and there's not enough dollars being thrown at it. Until they actually do that and budget money, we're fighting a linear battle against exponential forces.
So Tom, let me ask you this: when you get into an engagement potential with a new client, and you bring up the topic of cybersecurity, which I am sure you do as part of your learning process or the process that you guys do, what's the reaction with most of the people? Are they, yes, we got to do something, or you know what, I'm not worried about cybersecurity, especially on my buildings and my building side. I don't really care, it's not going to happen to me. The types of answers we've heard for several years, and so from your perspective, when you bring that up, what's the general reaction?
Well, almost no one has awareness of it, as we've all been talking about. And I want to say what Kenny said earlier is that, just awareness and acknowledgement is a step. I don't even, much less all the solutions, just acknowledging that. And it's hard to deny the facts when we say you have X number of buildings, you have X number of control systems. Statistically, most of them are connected to the internet. It's just true. So there's acknowledgement of that. But I'll tell you what's interesting is that whether you're talking to the facilities folks or the IT folks, when they hear and get that awareness, they realize that it is so untapped and untouched that it becomes a hot potato. It's almost like they want to put their fingers in the air and say, I'm not listening to a thing you were saying because they've done nothing. And from a department level, do I have budget? Do I have budget? Do I have people? Do I have to make a case for this? And so I know it's a little bit regrettable, but the first thing is it's so big, and I'm not touching it today. I've got to, which is why really you alluded to earlier, it has to come from the top. It's an institutional risk issue, and it's a core mission risk issue. So I think it really has to come from the top, so that it's not a budgetary turf kind of worry.
Well, we're going to close out this segment. Tom Shircliff, Intelligent Buildings, really want to thank you for joining us today on this beautiful afternoon. It's been great, and hopefully, we'll see you at the Control Trend Awards coming up January in good old Las Vegas. A good plug for the Control Trend Awards. Couldn't help it, indeed, Kenny.
Indeed,
So